Look, I'll be honest, I knew what I was doing was pretty stupid. I've always been pretty lazy and I use just a couple variants of the same password for everything. And then whenever I need a particularly unique password for something, I just store it locally in like a notepad or notes or something. Was I aware of it being bad? Yes. But until last week, until a critical failure and obvious failure had happened, it was good enough. And so I didn't address it. But a good enough situation can actually be quite dangerous. And here's why. A situation which is good enough can largely be ignored precisely because it's good enough. That's a good thing because it means we can use those attentional resources on something else, but it's a bad thing because it could potentially be hiding a serious but gradual, dangerous trajectory. Now, gradual slopes can be hard or even impossible to identify and to notice when you are in them. There's an old saying that goes something like this. If you drop a frog in boiling water, it will jump out. But if you drop a frog in cold water and gradually increase the temperature, it won't notice the temperature increasing and will eventually die. Now, modern biologists think the frog would jump out, but thankfully they haven't tested it, so let's just stick with the metaphor. Even if the frog were able to notice the difference in temperature, there are some changes so gradual that they are genuinely impossible to identify and pinpoint. A perfect example of this is Sorites Paradox. The original ancient Greek paradox goes something like this. Consider a heap of sand composed of 1 million individual grains of sand. Premise 1 states that 1 million grains of sand is a heap of sand. And premise 2 states that if you remove 1 grain of sand from that heap, what remains is still a heap. So 999,999 grains of sand is still a heap. Removing one single particle of sand has not affected the status of the initial heap as being a heap. So if these two premises are accepted, and they seem perfectly reasonable, you repeatedly apply them to the same heap, eventually you will be forced to admit that 1 grain of sand is a heap of sand. So you have two apparently perfectly reasonable and valid premises, leading to a completely absurd conclusion. You have one thing, a heap of sand, which transforms into another thing, a grain of sand, but there's no one single step in that process thoroughly analyzed, which can be pointed to and identified as that's where the change happened. It's like technical debt. One bad or sloppy line of code is not necessarily going to break your whole app, and one missed security patch isn't going to get you immediately hacked. But keep making little incremental mistakes over time unacknowledged, and eventually you might find yourself standing under a mountain of risk or an impending collapse. While it may be impossible for us to detect the exact point at which some number of grains of sand turn into a heap of sand, surely it would clarify things for us if someone were to dump a wheelbarrow of sand over our heads. I mean, in my case, I was a grain of sand away from a potentially serious company security breach, and my boss's Discord message was the thing which woke me up and pointed out that there is in fact a heap there, you know? So although my personal password management situation had been gradually worsening over time, I was completely unable to detect it until I slipped up and did something too obvious and too embarrassing to ignore. Obvious failures like these can end up being some of the best things that can happen to us in these situations. When we're stuck in a rut of passive mediocrity or even moderate degeneracy, a jarring critical failure can end up being a catalyst for a remarkably positive change. For example, the consequence of my Passwords incident was that I migrated my passwords to a professional password management tool, and I erased the local, highly insecure, unencrypted Passwords.txt file. Don't do that. Which leads me to the sponsor of today's video. No, I'm just kidding. Not there yet. So I messed up, rather loudly and embarrassingly, and this forced me to evaluate my trajectory and to make some important changes. And now my password management is better than it's ever been before. The point is, if you reframe how you see failures, you can use them as tools to your advantage. Now, once you have extracted the value from a failure, discard it, throw it away and forget about it. Don't let yourself obsess over it or beat yourself up about it. A failure can be useful if responded to properly, but it can just as easily escalate into a far more serious problem if you let it. Imagine you are talking on a stage in front of 1,000 people. The lights are blinding, everyone's holding their breath, and they're waiting for you to say what you were going to say. You begin to speak, and you slip up and you mispronounce a word, and you notice it. Scenario A. You use the information from that mistake to correct your pronunciation the next time you say it, but you immediately push your focus onto the next thing you were going to say, and you quickly forget about it. The 4 people in the audience who noticed forget about it by the end of the next sentence, and your talk continues smoothly. Scenario B. You curse yourself under your breath for messing up such a simple word. How could you be so stupid? And you start thinking about how everyone's perception of you is changing now that they've seen you for who you really are, just a complete wreck of a human being with no confidence and a total imposter with no business being on the stage, and how will I ever recover from this? And suddenly, they're listening, they're watching, and it's dead silence. Your fears begin to be realized like a bunch of self-fulfilled prophecies. What started as a little tiny mistake is now a real and noticeable blunder. Now you should still cut your losses and move on as fast as you can. Now is always the best time to do that. But the point is, some failures can be as useful and beneficial or as destructive and catastrophic as we allow them to become. So when you do happen to fail rather spectacularly, try to learn as much from the experience as you can. Allow the failure to shock you and wake you up and push you in the right direction. And cut your losses. Move on from the mistake. Don't obsess over it, and carry on to better and brighter things. Has something like my Passwords incident ever happened to you? What's that tolerable flaw in your life that you're waiting on some grand failure or wake-up call to fix? Tell me in the comments below and let's talk about that. I'm planning on posting a hopefully interesting and useful video every week, so subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.